pilot told you for 12 straight years that flying at night was dangerous, and then 32 days before takeoff suddenly said it was perfectly safe. Would you board that plane? Or would you start asking a different question? What changed, the facts or the incentive? Because what happened in this hearing room wasn't a debate. It wasn't even a confirmation process. This was a stress test of credibility. Live, on record, under oath. And at the center of it stood Elizabeth Warren and Pete Hegseth, locked in something far more precise than politics. This was timeline versus truth. Warren didn't speculate. She didn't generalize. She pulled receipts, years, dates, direct quotes, stacked one after another until the pattern stopped being arguable and started being measurable. From 2013 to 2024, Pete Hegseth said the same thing in different rooms, on different platforms, with the same certainty. Women should not serve in combat. No qualifiers, no conditions, no ambiguity. And then 32 days. 32 days between that position and its complete reversal. So Warren asked the only question that matters when timelines collapse. What changed? Because this is where the hearing stops being procedural and starts becoming forensic. Elizabeth Warren doesn't argue with Pete Hegseth. She reconstructs him. Line by line, year by year. 2013, Fox News. Women in combat lower standards. 2015, same argument, same conclusion. June 2024. Women shouldn't be in combat at all. A published book, page 26, page 48, same position, no hesitation. 10 weeks before the hearing, straight up, not even disguised as policy debate. 12 years of consistency, not a slip, not a misquote, a pattern. And then Warren does something precise. She removes interpretation entirely and replaces it with math. 12 years versus 32 days. Because on November 9th, 2024, that same voice delivers a new line. Some of our greatest warriors are women. No transition, no bridge, no explanation, just a reversal clean enough to sound rehearsed. And this is where the logic tightens. Because if the original argument was about standards, then where were those standards in the absolute statements? Where was the if? Where was the condition? There wasn't one. So this isn't a refinement of belief. This isn't new evidence changing a conclusion. This is contradiction, compressed into a 32-day window. And Warren doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. She asks again, slower this time, sharper. What changed in those 32 days? Not what you believe now, not what your policy will be. What changed? And this is the moment where most hearings drift into abstraction, policy language, safe phrasing, procedural exits, but this one doesn't. Because Elizabeth Warren doesn't let the question float. She anchors it to a date, a decision, and a consequence. 32 days before that reversal, nothing in Pete Hegseth's public record suggests doubt. No gradual shift, no evolving nuance, no public reconsideration. Then comes the nomination from Donald Trump, and suddenly the position aligns with the role he's trying to secure. That's not speculation, that's sequence. And sequence is where motive begins to take shape. Warren names it without overreaching. A nomination conversion, and the phrase lands because it doesn't need embellishment. It fits the timeline too cleanly to ignore. Now watch the response. Hegseth doesn't dispute the dates. He doesn't deny the quotes. He pivots. Standards, lethality, meritocracy. Words that sound like answers, but don't resolve the contradiction. Because if standards were always the issue, then the earlier statements should have reflected that condition. They didn't. They were absolute. And absolute claims don't quietly transform into conditional ones without a reason. So the room narrows. This is no longer about what he believes. It's about whether belief follows principle or position. And then Warren shifts the frame again, moving from past statements to future incentives, from what was said to what might be done. The revolving door. A system where senior officials leave public office and step directly into defense industry roles, contracts, consulting, influence. A system he himself criticized. He argued that generals should be barred from joining that industry for 10 years, not 2, not 5. 10, a hard line, So Warren does something deceptively simple. She removes the abstraction and makes it personal. Will you make that same commitment? Not for generals. For you is for you. And suddenly, the clarity disappears. No timeline, no certainty, just deferral. Hey, I would consult with the Xi president. Think about the structure of that answer. A man who proposed a fixed rule now requires permission to follow it. That's not a legal constraint, that's a choice. And Warren translates it instantly, almost clinically. Rules for them, flexibility for you. This is where the hearing crosses into something else entirely. Because now we're not looking at a contradiction in words, we're looking at a pattern in behavior. A long-held position that shifts when power enters the equation. A firm rule that softens when applied personally. And when you place those two moments side by side, the 32-day reversal and the refusal to commit, you don't just see inconsistency, you see alignment, not with principle, but with opportunity. And that's the point where this stops being about one nominee and starts becoming a question about the system itself. Because at this point, the hearing is no longer about Pete Hegseth. It's about the people who don't get to change positions in 32 days. The 250,000 women currently serving, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Space Force, who don't get to rewrite the standard depending on who's watching. Who don't get to say one thing for 12 years and another when the stakes get higher. They train under fixed rules. They deploy under fixed risks. And they live with the consequences when those rules are applied unevenly. So, when Elizabeth Warren presses that timeline, she's not just exposing inconsistency. She's forcing a collision between rhetoric and reality. Because if a belief this central, this public, can reverse in 32 days without explanation, then what exactly is stable inside the system that governs them? What holds? What doesn't? And more importantly, who decides? This is not about party lines. It's not about left or right. It's about whether standards are real or adjustable, depending on proximity to power. Because once that line moves, even once, it doesn't just affect a nomination. It affects trust. Trust in testimony, trust in oversight. Trust that when someone says, this is the standard, it actually means something. So here's the question that doesn't go away when the cameras turn off. If a position held for 12 years can change in 32 days, what happens after confirmation when the pressure is gone and the power is permanent? If moments like this matter to you, where words, timelines, and accountability collide, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe, because this isn't where it ends.